Spending 2 months isolated in a hole could cost you 25 days of your life and lead to 7.5-hour naps. Whether we like it or not, our environment sets the pace of our lives. Day, night, day, night, day, night, marked by the movement of the sun across the sky. When it's not our societies that too often impose a rhythm on us, based on the dreadful routine of commute, work, sleep, sleep, commute, work, sleep. Yet, we also have within us a natural rhythm, an inner rhythm that's harder to detect, and one that we can only perceive when cut off from the world, far from any external stimulation. It's our internal clock. This tiny conductor sets our day's pace and leads our night's symphony. It corresponds to a small area of our brain called the suprachiasmatic nuclei, and it allows our body to always stay in sync with a cycle that plays out over 24 hours, known as the circadian rhythm.
The first study conducted on the human circadian clock was carried out by a human, Michel Siffre, who in 1962 decided to become the subject of his own experiment, which involved finding himself at the bottom of a hole, more precisely at the bottom of the gouffre de Scarasson, and staying there for 2 months without seeing daylight. The goal was to be completely removed from the rhythms of the world around us. He cuts himself off from the cues of the day-night cycle to observe how the body responds. To live for those 2 months cut off from the world, you need a tent, a sleeping bag, a food supply, batteries, but also books, CDs, and scientific equipment to keep track of time and not die of boredom. Buried underground, 110 meters deep, without daylight, without the ticking of a clock marking time, Siffre has no precise idea of how fast time is passing. His only reference for time is his own perception. During the 60 days of voluntary isolation that the experiment lasts, only a thin wire connects him to the team of scientists who stayed on the surface. Michel uses this phone to share details about his daily routine. Everything is meticulously recorded: bedtime, wake-up time, meal time, perceived time, and without any help, Michel has to estimate the time and the day he thinks it is. And on September 17th, 1962, when the team that stayed on the surface finally calls him to announce that the 60 days of this crazy experiment are finally over, Michel is convinced that he is 25 days earlier than it really is. 25 days that have vanished. Perceived time and actual time are completely out of sync.
Yet, paradoxically, the experiment is a success. It demonstrates not only that human beings have an internal clock that allows them to organize their activities throughout the day, but also that this clock has a rhythm close to 24 hours. Because even though Siffre comes out with a staggering perceived time gap of 25 days, despite the absence of any time reference, his internal clock, his body, continued to pace his life in cycles of 24.5 hours between 2 awakenings. Even in complete darkness, without visual cues, your rhythm remains. Siffre's sense of time and his thoughts deceived him. He considered long nights of sleep as just short naps, and even when he was awake, when an hour passed in reality, he felt like only 30 minutes had gone by. Time always seems to pass too quickly, but humans aren't the only ones with an internal clock. What about other living things? In the 18th century, Dortus de Méran asked this and kept a mimosa plant in darkness for days. He observed that this plant, which under normal conditions closes its leaves at nightfall and opens them again in the morning, didn't change its behavior at all. It keeps this rhythm even when cut off from sunlight and continues to close and open its petals at the right time like a metronome. At least at first. Because after a few days, the clock controlling the opening and closing of its petals ends up getting completely out of sync.
About 100 years later, Augustin Pairette de Candolle gave a plant jet lag even before the airplane was invented. To do this, he once again locked a mimosa in a room, keeping it in darkness during the day and lighting it up at night. During the first days of the experiment, the plant seems to have completely lost its sense of rhythm, but after several cycles, it finally adjusts to the day-night cycle that is imposed on it. This experiment highlights the plant's ability, thanks to its internal clock, to adapt to a new environment. Much later, it was discovered that severe time shifts can artificially increase your age, or at least speed up the aging process.
This is the strange discovery made in 1997 by scientists from the CNRS who were trying to understand the influence of the seasons on the mouse lemur, a small lemur native to Madagascar. The experiment consisted of, let's say, speeding up the tempo of these animals' internal clock. The researchers kept the mouse lemurs in isolation and used artificial lighting to simulate 2.5 months of long days followed by 2.5 months of short days. As a result, very quickly, signs of aging were observed in the lemurs, with the appearance of white hair, fatigue, and a halt in reproduction. In addition, the unfortunate mouse lemurs saw their life expectancy drop sharply, going from an average of 7 years in the wild to 3 years. It is believed that accelerating the day-night rhythm is what caused this dramatic decline, and unfortunately, slowing down this rhythm did not slow down their aging.
If mouse lemurs have a fragile internal clock, well, the fly's clock is rock solid, as demonstrated by a strange experiment that began in 1954 and is still ongoing today in a laboratory at a university in Kyoto, Japan. The idea? Lock flies in the dark and see if the absence of sunlight will influence their offspring. Well, after 60 years of experimentation, we can say that the distant descendants have not changed physically. And even more surprisingly, their rhythm hasn't shifted. It only takes 3.5 hours of light for them to return to the cycle the flies from 1954 originally had. Their extraordinarily robust internal clock has remained intact as it was passed down through 500 generations. Amazing, but even so, does keeping an exact rhythm really provide an advantage over the long course of evolution?
That's what Professor Yonu Yang and his collaborators wondered, and they conducted experiments on different strains of cyanobacteria. And this was to find out if their internal clock has an influence on their fitness. This measurement basically describes an individual's ability to have lots of offspring, who in turn will have lots of offspring themselves. The first experiment involved placing bacteria with an internal clock and a rhythmic bacteria, that is bacteria without a rhythm, together in a bath. After varying the day-night rhythm, the researchers noticed that the bacteria with an internal clock quickly outcompeted the arrhythmic bacteria until they disappeared. They then put strains of rhythmic bacteria with different tempos in competition, placing them in baths that were also set to different rhythms. Each time, the bacteria strain whose rhythm came closest to the baths grew the most. If you haven't got rhythm in your blood, you'll end up losing your hide. So, if you're a bacterium, having a biological clock that's well synchronized with the rhythm of your environment improves your ability to reproduce and even to survive.
And one might wonder if animals as peculiar as us, who invented electricity, alarm clocks, and other screens, haven't changed their natural rhythm, sometimes causing a mismatch with their environment. Just in case, I'll leave you now. I'm going to try to work on my sense of circadian rhythm. Just so you know, it was recently discovered that Viagra improves hamsters' resistance to jet lag.
If you want to know more about biological rhythms, I invite you to check out the website for the clock exhibition, which I've been working on for a while and has just gone live. Games, videos, and all the other content from the exhibition are available for free and let you dive deeper into this fascinating subject. The address is www.expoclock.org. Thanks to everyone supporting the channel, you help us keep going.